thank you all for being here. This is absolutely incredible. As I've spoken to you all about, we created this show because the range of perspectives matter, right? And we need to talk about not only the development of our city and how we're moving forward, but how we're thinking as different individuals. So it's an honor to have you all here. And I see Justin all the time. We talk often. I haven't seen you in a while. We're gonna talk about that though, but it's but it's all good. So as you may or may not know, we open this show with a question. We titled this "One's Gotta Go." In the past, we've done Michael Jackson and Prince. We've done Beyonce and Janet Jackson. And you have to answer the question, naming the person who has to go, and then provide us with your reasoning for the person who has to stay. In this case, we're actually going to break it down into an era of music.
Okay.
I know everyone here has a love for music. We've learned that.
Yeah.
I joke all the time on the show and talk about how I don't have a journalism or broadcasting background, but Raven does, and she provides me with all these cliff notes of everybody before the show. So I know that everybody here loves a little music. So the question is, one's gotta go. It's either 70s soul music, Al Green, Shaka Khan, that, Marvin Gaye, or it's 90s R&B.
Come on.
It's Jodeci, it's Drew Hill, it's Mary J. Blige. It's if one had to stay and one had to go, which one has to go? Don't all speak at once.
By default, I say the 90s has to go because I know the 70s.
You know the 70s?
Yes.
I think you probably know the 90s a little bit, too.
But I don't know it as well as I know the 70s.
Okay.
I grew up. I graduated from high school in 1977, so that's the music that's burned in my brain. And I think Marvin Gaye is the best of all time.
Favorite Marvin Gaye song? Surprise us all right now.
You know, give me three choices.
Okay.
Because I know, I'm terrible about music. I'm really super terrible. But it is... Give me names of Marvin Gaye songs.
So you've got Let's Get It On?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
of course.
Yes.
Yes.
So 70s soul has to stay.
Yes, 70s soul has to stay.
But mostly because that's your jam, that's your groove, that's okay. I respect that.
I'm still trying to figure out why you choose violence.
Oh,
That's so
I know. We have to start out with cutting things we love, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I came of age in the 90s, so that's my groove, right? Like Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, TLC, you name it.
Hard to live without.
I can sing every lyric to almost every song from that genre, but my spirit is 70s. My theme song is Bad Mama Jamba by Carl Carlton.
Okay.
I don't make it a day without listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire.
I love that.
So my spirit, and I know that music informed the music that is the 90s
Sure.
music. So if you remove the 70s, what does the 90s sound like? It's tough. One's got to go.
One's got to go. One's got to go. Just for the next 35 minutes, and then you can come back.
You can have it back.
I mean, I feel like I'm going to lose no matter what. I have to agree. I think the 90s have to go just because the 70s is so emblematic of a time and a movement that was so important. And without that music, the 90s just doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Okay.
Now I'm going to get slammed by everybody.
That's all right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't get how we can cut out the 90s, y'all. Especially speaking of this man right here. He literally has a 90s themed R&B bar. Like right down the street.
You were there?
I was there.
Oh, my goodness.
No, that's it. Even
That's
just
the
for
time
like,
frame.
yeah, I mean, so I was born in 87. And so like late 90s is definitely like more like my era, right? And just like for Usher alone, and we got to keep it.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
My Way is still the jam.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Very much so. Remember that video?
Which one? My
The
Way?
My Way
Yeah,
video?
of course I remember
He was like
I
dancing
still
around.
have this CD cover.
Do you?
I know CDs were these things that used to be in these plastic things,
cases.
and then you would put them in an actual device. I still have the My Way CD cover with still intact.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usher's residency right now.
I want to
is
go, man.
In Vegas, right?
Crazy
Yes.
right now in Vegas. Yeah.
Gotta
It's
go.
incredibly expensive, but everyone says it's a
It's got to
phenomenal,
be worth it, right?
phenomenal show. To, let's talk not Usher himself, but when I think about that, both eras of music, right? And what we see now in the Grammys, you see we've seen the folks in the 70s and 80s being honored. Now we see the folks in the 90s being honored, and tributes to Janet Jackson and tributes to LaFace Records and all of the things that's going on. And I just think what I worry about, this is what I worry about. I go to Lando's happy hour sometime. Mm-hmm. I don't know if have you met Lando yet? Mm-hmm. He does Friday Flow at Washington Park. He's a legend in this city in regards to bringing people together, having really positive energy and good times through music and culture. And I go to the happy hour, and I can still resonate with that generation before me's music. What I fear now is the kids underneath us, like, what are they gonna like?
Yeah.
Migos? I don't know. What are they gonna listen to?
You don't know, right?
They're gonna listen to.
Some of it's coming back though. I mean, Bruno is doing some stuff that's such a good throwback. I love her. She's doing some real cool throwback stuff.
So you mentioned Bruno.
Yeah, and Anderson .Paak and the stuff that they're doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. What's the name of the group?
I forget the name of the group together.
Raven's mouth.
You say it. I'm like trying to read lips.
Silk
Sonic.
It's a good name.
They also don't tell you when you get older, you're going to forget things.
Yeah, you should see Raven helping me work my phone. It's a key indicator that I'm getting older every day. The reason I want the Bruno Mars piece, Justin and I had an opportunity. We were down at South by Southwest, and we were at Culture House. And it's a big event down there, and it was at Bruno Mars's house.
Oh,
and it was
Rico's like, you got to make it down here. And I lived in Austin for like 12 years. I've never been out this way where he had me like,
it was different
going out too.
He had the waterfall going into the pond, and it was crazy.
That is nice.
And it was insane. It was insane. Longevity. I want to talk to you a little bit about that, right? And the work that the Port is doing. I remember being introduced to the Port, right? And as a young creative and entrepreneur in the city, being confused as to what the Port is. I want to first take the time to explain that, give you an opportunity to explain that, because it's so important and so significant. And then dig deeper into some of the other issues related to that you guys are really targeting.
Well, thanks for asking the question. And you're right, we're completely confusing. We're a port, the Port Authority without a port. So it's, from the very beginning, people are confused. But really, simply, what we are is in the real estate business. And our goal is to take vacant, blighted real estate and put it back into productive use. And we've got this huge passion to make sure that the ownership of our real estate in our city is that there's a higher percentage of it owned by African Americans going forward. Yeah. The very people that have been shut out for 100 years from ownership of real estate. And we can't be surprised when we've got a really big wealth gap in our country. I think that's the biggest problem our country faces is a wealth gap. And the fastest way to gain wealth is in real estate. For the average person, it's own a house. But there are generations of people who haven't grown up with home ownership in their families, so they don't even see that as an option. So that's something that's got to be overcome. And then for those that are more affluent, it's owning investment real estate. And we see in particular, we're working in a lot of our neighborhood business districts that now are becoming more popular. For 40, 50 years, we saw all these neighborhood business districts go in decline. But now, whether it's Evanston or Walnut Hills or Avondale, Price Hill, Madisonville, North College Hill, these neighborhoods, North Side certainly, are more popular. And what we cannot do is just sit back and have the ownership of the redevelopment and rebirth of those business centers be all white owned. So we're really, really passionate about diversifying the ownership of real estate and the developers who do it.
What changed that made, and I want you to provide some insight here, because I know you know this space really well. What changed in those neighborhoods? I grew up in Avondale. I had a friend visiting from Chicago about a month ago. And here I am, I'm having a conversation with this friend, and I'm telling him, this neighborhood that I grew up in, and we ride through, he's looking at me, he's like, this isn't explain anything that you said because it's a different neighborhood. What changes that make a neighborhood go into this desired area to build and live? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think one aspect is that cities are more popular and neighborhoods are more popular. My children, who are in their early 30s, they want to live in diverse places. They want to live in places where they're walking. They want entertainment options. So I think that in general, in all the places in the country, my daughter lives in New York and now she's in Brooklyn. I mean, my kids both lived in DC for a long time. They're seeking out places that have that diversity and have interesting things to do. Has energy. Yeah. And, obviously architecture, we want to be able to enjoy the great architecture we had so long ago. So I just think there's a trend toward neighborhoods. And then we've been working really hard in a number of those neighborhoods. And after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you get to a tipping point, and you can't do the business districts until you get the housing stock built back again. You need to make sure things are safer, and the city kind of follows along with us, and they start doing streets again. And there's this investment, and then all of a sudden people are like, hey, if I opened a coffee shop, a bar, it would be popular here. And so we're trying to stay in the front end of that to make sure we're reaching out to get a diverse group of people.
To double opt in, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I would love to hear your perspective.
I agree with all that. I think there also has to be a real intention, because when we start talking about market forces and people are wanting to repopulate, a lot of times that doesn't include us. That doesn't include Black and brown people. That doesn't include disenfranchised communities. And when I've seen cities do it well, it's when we've said, okay, we know that there's going to be an investment in a place. We know that's going to drive market forces so that the biggest and the baddest and the people with all the resources are going to come and want to put a lot of money in a place. How do we create space to make sure that we're being inclusive? And I think we've made enough mistakes in this city and done it wrong that we're finally slowing the train down and actually thinking about how we do it better. And if you go city to city, we call it gentrification. We might call it lack of community investment. When we're chasing a thing, then we're already behind. And I think when I think about, we go all the way back to 2001, the unrest in the city of Cincinnati, the investments that led to the spaces that we're in right now down here and over the Rhine, we made investments. Great things came from it. And then we realized we were chasing a thing that in many ways, what we thought maybe someone would buy in over the Rhine. And then it became this big kind of huge wave of investment. And then we looked at what felt in many ways like a transfer, right? A lot of the individuals that we wanted to see rise and come as part of the community development were left out. Because it takes a real intention, and it takes you getting ahead of it to be thoughtful about what it takes to make a real community. And real strong communities are anchored in inclusion and diversity. And everybody's at the table for decision making, and there's room for all different types of people. The most resilient communities are ones that are diverse, that have everybody at the table. The ones that shift through downturns are ones where people are choosing. Okay, so this week, the big hot neighborhood is this. Next year, 10 years from now, it's that. But when we build with inclusion in mind, then we get these resilient communities that last over and over generations.
Just keep getting better.
And that's so necessary.
Very important.
That's so necessary.
Very
and
important.
that's trickling down to our world a little bit, arts and culture, right? When I first met you, that was the topic of our discussion. And I've always told Justin, the thing I like about him most is the fact that he's not from here. So he doesn't have the that's too big for Cincinnati mentality. Right? We've heard that over and over again. Because some of the things he runs by me, I'm like, that is crazy. We're going to do it. But that is crazy, right? And the way you're thinking about as the executive director of, let's just $6 million roughly public art event, right? And all the words that come out of your mouth are focused on making sure that it feels like it's for everyone. What's leading that? What's fueling that as you talk about Blink and it coming back this year?
Yeah, thank you so much. From the very beginning, the conversations Rico and I had were centered around how we can just make sure more people see their way into this event, honestly. We're a large public art event. We're a free event. So in theory, anyone can attend, but that doesn't mean that everyone always feels welcome attending an event like ours, right? So what prevents people from feeling welcomed in an event, right? Do they feel like there are creatives that are representing, their communities or their backgrounds or just their interests or their aesthetics? It can be that simple. Is there work that is responding to me? And so a huge part of our efforts this year has just been like growing that collaborative circle, inviting more people in. So this year we launched our first public call for artists across all of our disciplines for Blink. So in past years, the creative partners have kind of directly curated the event. In the first couple of years, they had to sort of nurture it and say, hey, we know some artists that would be good for this, or hey, these folks do this space really well, whether or not it's mural paintings or projection artists, whatever it is. But this year, coming into what is now our third Blink, took place in 2017 and 2019 before, we said, hey, let's really test ourselves. Let's test this community here locally that knows about our event, but let's also see what our brand is worldwide. Will international artists, step up and apply to be a part of this thing? Do we chart, against some of these, peer cities like a Sydney, Australia, or, Paris, France,
Right.
or any of these incredible international art events that take place all over the world? That's who we benchmark ourselves against, but we've never really opened it up and said, hey, if you're interested in bringing your work to Cincinnati, raise your hand, let us know. And so we opened that call earlier this year, and what we found is there's a ton of folks in this community that maybe never thought that they could be a participant in Blink that said, hey, I'd like to bring my work here. But also all over the world, we saw people raise their hand and say, hey, we'd like to bring our work to Cincinnati this year. And so that's really what's been important to us, is thinking about how we can make sure there are more creatives that are at the table. We've expanded our partner circle this year to include more people. Rico is a part of an advisory committee that we formed this year just to make sure there are more folks informing the work that we had this year. And there's just a ton of efforts, and myself and all the partners, the Cincinnati Regional Chamber where I work, are all just very invested in the idea of making sure that this is an event that really does feel like it's for the people here, but also anyone else that can get themselves here come October. That's the great part about a gigantic public art event that's done at the scale that we have, is that there's plenty of things to see, and it's large enough that we can invite plenty of people in. So just making sure that the work represents that has been vitally important to us.
I mean, we have our advantages in this town, right? We do. And I think we don't highlight those enough. But our arts culture here, and that pairs with development of communities and everything else. I mean, we just lit up when we saw G walking past the building, right? And,
G was by here? Come on.
He just
Yeah.
walked past, yeah.
Come on.
We want to know what he's doing with the bottles.
Exactly.
Love.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later.
Right. No, but
We know it's something for you, though. So
We
rare to
said
the
Listen,
tomato.
every time I talk to G, there's a different idea. So who knows what he's working on? But you're so right about the uniqueness of here, right? A lot of people, so I'm not from Cincinnati. I'm from Dallas, Texas originally. Lived in New Orleans for 4 years, and then been living in Austin, Texas for about the last 12. And a lot of people that I talk to outside the region about this event, right? If I'm telling my friends back home, if I'm talking to sponsors from outside of this region, they ask me why does this gigantic public art event take place in Cincinnati? And candidly, the reason is because I'm not sure it could take place anywhere else in the United States.
Right.
It's no joke.
Right.
There is a deep history of supporting the arts here in this region, from our philanthropic, great foundations that have been here for generations, to our corporate sponsors, the public, support for the arts. It's pretty incredible. So that's a huge reason why we do have this dense and vibrant urban core area that has gone through changes and does have that history that, we've all discussed. But the fact that we have this dense walkable area is a big reason we can have a public event like this. And the fact that people here just like to have a good time is a huge reason why you have hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets just to be standing next to strangers and looking up at buildings to check out art.
The good architecture.
Pretty incredible.
The architecture,
a river.
too.
Yes.
Yep.
We have a lot
Absolutely.
to celebrate.
A lot of advantages.
So many of those things. And I think that's candidly, any city could produce an event like Blink, right? All you need to do is get the funding and work with artists and, get the support, right? But
Sounds easy.
it sounds easy, right? That's it, y'all. There's a simple toolkit.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds easy.
But there's a reason it
Music.
doesn't take place anywhere else here. This is a nowhere else experience. Other cities would they fight for things like this,
Absolutely.
right? That have an economic impact like ours, that have a cultural impact and bring people together around something that's, not sports or, not politics or nothing else. It's just the idea of standing next to your friends, your neighbors, or strangers and checking out art, right? That's incredible.
I'd like to dig into that, right? We often have conversations about what we're not doing well, right? And very rarely do we have a conversation about what we're doing well. And I want to talk about that real quick, Yvette. You got to hear the story. So I'm down at Essence Fest.
Okay.
Justin he
New
will
Orleans.
shock you, right? And I'm down at Essence Fest. He's like, yeah, I've been to Essence Fest. What you doing at Essence Fest, But you worked on a production team there.
I did,
right?
yeah.
And the year that, who performed?
Oh gosh, it was the year. I mean, there was a bunch, but the headliner was Beyonce that year.
Yeah, just Beyonce.
And it was
artist.
God, it was maybe like a month or so after Michael Jackson had passed.
Yeah, wow.
And yeah, I studied like film and video production in college. So I was like working a camera crew, and our bosses were like, Beyonce's performing, y'all just go out there. Like, just like go have a good time. So we're rushing up with our like production badges at the front or whatever. And she performs Halo in honor of Michael Jackson. And just like the entire Superdome was just like tears, right? Like it was just like ridiculous. Yeah, lots of fun down in New Orleans.
Yeah, you got some. Yeah, you. Always,
I need to get to know Justin a little
I
better.
know.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I'm
telling you.
Yeah.
You doing?
I know.
For Beyonce.
Your job is
we need to get
way better than
friends.
mine.
Sneaky.
I'm doing it all wrong. I'm not.
He's been here like 7 months, 8 months, and I'm just like, yeah, I know Justin. I'm like, yeah, I know Justin too, and it's like, he's the connector now.
Stop
like,
it.
oh,
Come on. Like, he shouldn't say this because he's the
All
guy that's
over the
connected
place.
me to half the people I know, right? Like
all over the place.
Right.
What else are we doing well, Yvette?
I think we do a lot well. I think
Yeah.
Cincinnati had this bad reputation that I think we've shed of like we always thought that we weren't good enough. And that was, I told this story when I did Cincy Stories several years back about driving in my car and there was a car in front of me and it had a bumper sticker that said Cincinnati is just okay.
Wow.
And I immediately was enraged because I was like, who puts a bumper sticker on a car that says Cincinnati is just okay? Then I thought, who makes a bumper sticker that says Cincinnati? And who sells that bumper? Like,
who puts bumper stickers on?
God, like,
yeah, right.
No, I'm joking.
The car had a few dents in it.
All right.
So clearly other people had expressed their discontent over the bumper sticker because the back of the car was pretty banged up. But I mean, that was our thing, this whole underdog. It was like cute for us to talk about our losses rather than our wins. And like, that's not okay anymore. Like today, if somebody says something bad about Cincinnati, you might get jumped in an alley. Like,
It's a great town.
We found our rhythm and we found our pride. And I think, so I don't think that's the story anymore. I think we celebrate our wins. I think we also talk about our opportunities. And you only get the opportunities if you see the things that we haven't quite done yet. So we've got a lot more to celebrate. But I don't think now when we talk about what Cincinnati doesn't do well, it's like because Cincinnati's bad. It's because we know we can do great things and let's do those things.
More.
I think that's what's presented the opportunities that we're talking about now, because people are saying, that's great, but also wouldn't it be great if we could also do this? That only comes from the shift from Cincinnati isn't great or it's just okay to Cincinnati can do anything. I love that. And I think that's where our sky is the limit. That's where the star is rising. And we do have a lot yet to do. And so I love to live in the place where I'm like, yeah, my city's great. Was there, one of my first projects on council was Washington Park. Cut the ribbon on that project. We've done a ton of projects down at how many projects did we do together?
Lots.
So many projects. But then also saying, well, where are the places that we now need to go? How many places can we do great things? And all the great business districts that we've worked on, whether it's College Hill, whether it's Madisonville, whether it's now in Westwood. We did all those projects together. And what I want to know is what's next?
One of the things
now?
we are going back to, I think you hit the key word for our conversation when you said intentionality.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're talking about all the way around. And so we just 2 months ago very intentionally put together a forum of Black developers. And so we are starting.
we talked about this.
We're starting to lean in and invest and provide opportunities to take these small organizations and leverage them up, get them to know each other better so they can partner on some projects. We've got to get scale, and we can't sit back and wait for it to happen organically because it'll take too long, and all this development will have already happened. Right. So we really have to lean in and say, hey, you too can do this, and let us help you.
How does, and you spoke about the opportunity piece, how does the mindset of Cincinnati having these great opportunities play into building communities the way the port envisions it happening in the future? I mean, when we talk about putting those groups together, is that a part of the conversation, right? These opportunities and ongoing opportunities.
Yes, I mean, I think it has to be a part of conversations. It is exactly what you just said, that we have to believe we can do it. We need more and more people saying, I can be a part of this.
Right.
I can be a part of it. One of our recent presentations that we gave, we had a couple women come up to or raise their hand and said, I've been buying 2 families and 3 families for 8 years and renovating them. Am I a developer? I'm like, yes, you are. Yeah. So, people are in the business that don't even know that's the business that they're in. And so they need to redefine their role and say, okay, I've been doing this kind of development. Now let me learn about other opportunities so I can perhaps, be a part of something bigger. So I think we have to have lots of conversations.
It's important.
It's important.
And transparency.
Right.
Yes.
Right. We talk about transparency quite a bit, you and I, with, and I am going to give you your credit. When you came here, you wanted to talk to the individuals who you felt like would keep it real with you. Sure. Right. And I know you've had some tough conversations with some of my colleagues and so forth who have just said certain things about, making sure that the production is the way it needs to be so that it can speak to everyone. I mean, how you thrive on transparency. Why? No, it's
one, I think I'm like a little bit blessed that, I've come in as like an outsider, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned this, and when you come in as an outsider, you get to ask people questions, right? And they, a little less defensive than if it's maybe someone from the area asking questions. And so try to take advantage of that opportunity, right? I've also inherited.
It is a big opportunity, right?
Yeah, yes.
It is. And an advantage.
Yeah. And I've inherited a thing that people love, right? Blink is a thing that has a brand recognition here in Cincinnati. And so one, I feel very fortunate, and I always like to acknowledge that like I've inherited this thing that I wasn't a part of in years past, and I've come in and people want to talk to you. They want to share those things, right? I can email a Rico Grant out of the blue and he's like, yeah, I'll take a meeting with you. Like, come, let's have breakfast together. And you're able to talk and hear from them, but not wasting that opportunity, especially in this year, bringing the event back after what will now be a 3-year hiatus. Yeah. I think going into the 3rd year of something is always a little challenging. And so a lot of it is just a sense of urgency, honestly, Rico, going like, we got to get this right this year. And that only takes place with talking to people and having those candid conversations and saying, hey, why haven't you been a part of this? Or why haven't you gone in past years for Blinks? It's fine that you haven't participated or applied to be a part of it, but like, tell me a little bit more why, and just listening to folks and hearing a little bit about what that reasoning is and going, okay, well, join us this year. And like, here's some stuff that's for you, or here's some things you might be interested in. That's all it is for me. It's just like an opportunity to like, engage more with people.
I love that. You're
luckily,
doing a great job.
People are engaging here. So
that's for sure.
You also have a look of trust.
Yes.
Like, you're like, if you ask
tell me more.
You have this look where you're like, if you ask me questions, I'd be like, sure, and then tell you my whole life story.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's very kind.
But I feel like it's like that African proverb where it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the spirit with which we're talking about that Cincinnati has finally figured out. That we've done a lot of stuff fast and left people out, and it just does not. It blows. It's like, if we want to build something long lasting, and what I love about all of this is that we're really thinking root to tip, or my grandmother used to say from the rooter to the tutor, of how we can be inclusive in every single piece. So it's not just about Black home ownership. Now we're talking about Black investment. We're talking about Black, not just Black businesses, but like Black ownership, Black franchises. Can we get not just the corner store, which we love the corner store, but like Black hotel ownership. How can we get you at the table all the way through? And when I say Black, I mean Black, brown, everybody who has typically been not included. So I want to make sure that I'm inclusive in that. But I think we've now figured out that as a city, because we've had some wins, because we've got some great things going on, that we have some credibility, that we can now go and build this thing the right way. And we've got the time and the ability to do it intentionally and over time. And if we do that, then it's going to last.
I love that. My grandmother used to say, there's the right way. You can do it the right way, or you can do it the again way.
Oh, I like that.
And that was always a lesson. I got a story for you. The first time we met in person, I was a super young entrepreneur, and I thought I was moving and shaking. I got asked to speak on this panel. Eric Kearney asked me to speak on this panel at the Freedom Center, and this was dead smack in the middle of your campaign. And you walked in, you said a few words, and everyone knew that you were super busy, and you did what you had to do. And so there are certain moments in my life that I remember at the stage that I'm at now, when I get tired and I get stretched and I get thin, that there are certain moments, and that's one of those moments because you handled it with such style and grace, but as you exited the room, you said these words. All right, bye, y'all. I got a campaign to run. And I just I never forgot it. So when I got to jump off a call, I jumped off a call.
And also,
I jumped off a call with Justin the other day. I was like, okay, got to go. I'll see y'all later.
And
I've got
because
a
we got
campaign
things
to
to do.
I have a reputation for being the last person to leave a room. So my team has been like always drilled into me. So my first run for council, I was literally the person who had the community member like folding the chairs up with people and like staying. And that was why nobody thought I was going to win that first time, was because I didn't get enough places. Like folks were at 5 events and I'm still at the first place folding up the chairs.
Right.
And that is a huge part of who I am, in the same way that you're speaking of, Justin, where I want to know and I want to hear and I want to be the person in the middle. I want to know and I want to hear and I want to be a part of helping people get to where they need to go.
Yeah.
And also, we got to be about the business.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
We got to get it done too. And so I think there's a time for all, and like you're probably seeing it now as you're breathing deeply with the last few weeks.
Sure.
You got this period of taking it all in, building and inclusive, and then you got this part where you just got to execute this.
Got to get the work done.
Gotta run it.
Well, I say that I mentioned that because I wanted to let you know that was incredibly significant to me.
Yeah,
and you and I haven't interacted a ton, but I'm always mindful of those moments, and it was inspiring to me because of individuals like you who have, quite frankly, walked so that we could run, right? Myself and G and Means and Lex Nicole, and that really matters to me. We joked out there. You've been hiding a little bit,
My
right?
favorite people. I'm not in Cincinnati nearly as much.
I know. So what are you doing? What does life look like for you right now?
It's busy.
Yeah.
I'm doing about 7 different things. One of them is running a national PAC called Democracy for America. Yeah. Started by Howard Dean back in 2004. You might remember Howard Dean ran for president. He started a long-lasting PAC that's still here today that helps, I think, diversify our political system. We have supported and helped elect over 1,100 people from school board up to president since our founding, and those look like regular, everyday people. I had the privilege of helping, you might know her, she was a bartender slash substitute school teacher from Brooklyn named AOC. Got to help her become a congressperson, got to help the youngest Black woman ever to be in Congress, who's also a nurse, Lauren Underwood, become a congressperson. I've got to help the Stacey Abrams, and I will be going down to Georgia for most of the month of October to support the Stacey Abrams, maybe become the first Black woman ever to be governor in the history of our nation. And so this work has been really fulfilling to me because I've gotten the chance to really help usher in a new generation of leadership. So when we talk about inclusion, we're talking about neighborhoods, we're talking about development, we're talking about art, and I'm talking about also this other area which has been left out. Like so many of us have been left out, regular everyday people left out of the ultimate leadership. You know, like if it wasn't your birthright, you weren't in Congress. And it wasn't your birthright if your mom or dad wasn't wealthy or rich or you didn't come from a certain family. And we're saying no. Iron workers are now in Congress because of the work that we've done, regular everyday people. And so just trying to create a new version of leadership. And as part of that, I'm a ABC contributor, and I am officially a part of the team. I work for Disney. It's my job. I just signed 2 more years with ABC. Wow. Feeling really good about that. I also am a commentator with NPR, just talking about political leadership and really making it more accessible to people. Because I feel like, you know, Ayanna Pressley, who is also one of my candidates from Cincinnati, but also by way of Boston, she says the people closest to the pain should be the people closest to the power. And I believe that so fundamentally that I think that we should have more people who are making decisions about their lives and our lives, who have been through something, who have gone through something, and not other people telling them what's right for them. And so that it dovetails really well into this conversation that we're having about making sure that we're building a nation that reflects who we are and doesn't exclude but includes people.
Yeah, it just feels like you're walking in purpose.
Thank you. I believe
and I know that has to feel really good.
Well, you know, I had to lose something real important to me to get there. I always tell people that, you know, when you lose something that's really significant, then it opens you up to what might be possible. possible.
That's
All
very
I
true.
wanted to do was to leave this city. And then when that was closed to me, it caused me to open up to like, what more can I do? And
I'll
then
just
this
run the
great-
country instead.
Well, I mean, maybe not that, but I'm helping a lot of other people do that.
Right.
And
I love that
I can
for you.
tell you that it has been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life.
And
I
thank
feel
you.
really blessed.
Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
What's next? What's next for the port? What's top of mind?
Well, what we've been talking about most this year is the fact that we bought 200 houses in late January from institutional investors. So I've spent most of my time on the speaking circuit this year talking about this.
Wait. I want to dial in there just a little
Yep.
bit. When you say institutional investors,
Right.
define that
Yes.
for us.
So what has happened, shockingly, in our country, going back to really it was after the foreclosure crisis in 2007, 2008, that these big institutional investors, big REITs, big funds that have traditionally, they own downtown office buildings, they own malls, they own big apartment complexes. That's what they've done for centuries. Those are the kind of investments that they've made in real estate. Well, after the foreclosure crisis, when the whole country was full of basically empty houses that people had been forced to move out of, they started buying them. And nobody was paying any attention. And I don't think at the beginning they intended to keep them. But what they did then is start renting them out. And then I think they, fairly quickly realized, we're onto something here. This is a brilliant strategy. And literally, even here, I've been in this job for almost 11 years. We feel like we know a lot about what's happening in the housing market here. A year ago, we read an article in the Wall Street Journal that said Ohio is being targeted for this kind of investment because we have low home values and high rents. So we said, gosh, what's happening in Hamilton County? And we had a young intern spend about 80 hours doing research, and we found that there are over 4,100 houses in our county owned by just 5 of these big investors.
Seriously?
Yes.
A lot. It's
Yes.
true.
And then, the more we learned, the more scared we got. And so then a couple months later, ironically, opportunity, like you said, sometimes opportunity just knocks. I got a call from a local receiver. So it was a local real estate firm that was asked by a judge to handle a portfolio of 2,000 houses owned by one of these big investors that basically just walked away. And it's a complicated thing. He basically had no recourse. He milked it, took out all the cash, and then just walked away. Ironically, Stanford undergrad, Harvard MBA, Boston Consulting Group, well-trained, brilliant financial person that just started a very predatory business. And so the houses, these 2,000 houses were in 3 different cities. So I told the guy, if you can get the judge to agree just to sell the Hamilton County houses separately, I'm in. So he called back later. Okay, the judge agrees. And I said, we're in. And then I'm like, well, what the heck am I doing? Because as you know, we've always owned vacant properties.
Right.
And now if we're going to buy 200 houses that people living in them, that's a whole different
That comes with a whole
another thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But our goal was to convert them back to home ownership. And of course, you know where they are.
Yep.
They're in all the same neighborhoods that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
They're targeting Black and brown, low to moderate income neighborhoods so that those people have no option to buy a house. The $100,000, $150,000 house doesn't exist. The big guys own them all.
That's right.
And they're renting and they're evicting and they're raising rents and all these other horrible things. So
They're making money.
they're making more money than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
While people are probably living in substandard housing and paying way more.
I cannot tell you what bad shape these houses are in. So we had to bid against 12 other investors. So if we didn't get them, the cycle would have continued.
Sure.
But we issued $16.5 million worth of bonds, took the big risk, and bought them. And so one thing we're doing is we've hired Wynn, Sister Barb Bush, is working to do homeownership training, financial literacy. So, and we'll be patient. So we're like, if you want to own your house, you're on a path.
It's not just the what, it's the how.
It's
right?
the how.
Yeah.
It's the how, right? And we have to be patient. It's not, hey, if you got a bunch of money and want to buy your house next week, you can buy it. Otherwise, you're out. We'll be patient. But what we found is that there were 50 of them that were vacant, far more than what the receiver had told us. And the condition that they're in is unbelievable. Wow. So people are living in these and they're in horrible shape. So we're fighting back on this big trend. And I know when you and I talked last time, one of my themes messages is who owns our real estate matters. In real estate is the scarcest, commodity. The earth is only so big; it's not going to get bigger. Who owns it? I don't want Chinese companies owning U.S. earth. I don't want other countries owning our real estate. Although here locally, the largest owner of industrial real estate in our region is a Canadian REIT. So we need to be paying attention to who owns it, and at the big macro corporate level, but then down to how many. We have a really low Black ownership. Black home ownership rate here.
20%.
Yes, it's crazy.
Lower
it's like
than
half
most
of the national
nation.
average.
Yeah.
And so we have to change that.
It's a big problem.
Who owns real estate matters. And so that's the big thing we're focused on right now.
Well, thanks for focusing on that. I think, in platforms like this, and these are things that I need to know, right? And we need to know as being bullhorns in the city. We can't rely on just the port to make a $16 million investment and change the landscape of things, right? It's a group effort. And I appreciate you for doing that work and the group that you have with you as well.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, wrap us up. Give us the Blink commercial.
Oh my gosh.
We are how many days away?
So we are 25-ish away. So Blink is a 4-day free immersive art experience in downtown Cincinnati in northern Kentucky. It takes place October 13th through the 16th from 7 to 11 p.m. every night. All you got to do is just show up downtown in one of our different zones or over in northern Kentucky into Covington. Show up, walk around, and you're going to experience public art in a way and a scale that you've never seen before. And as we were talking about, I think you're going to see a lot more diverse creatives from both this region and from all over the world being represented in the art.
It's going to be crazy. And there's one activation, I won't say what, that I've been mentioning to you week after week that I just can't wait. And we saw it down in Austin that is coming to Cincinnati.
Yep.
And it is going to knock the socks off of a lot of people. And it's deep, it's serious, but and it pays homage to someone who deserves to be paid homage to. So Thank you all for joining us. This has been absolutely incredible. I hope it's been just as fun for you as it's fun for me. And
great to be with you.
I'm with 90s R&B.
There we go. Come on, we're tied.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
All
Rico.
right.